Recognized for 5 minutes. Ms. Hagan.
Thank you. Others have asked you questions. There have been some excellent questions today, and you've provided some incredibly helpful testimony. I'd like to take a little bit different approach. And I want you to know that I think that maybe you believe here in Yuma and along the border that you've been forgotten, that we don't care. But you haven't. We do care, and it's why we're here. We read the statistics, we see the film on the 5 o'clock news, we hear about the fentanyl deaths, and we have some awareness of the human trafficking across our borders and spreading across our country. But reading about it is fundamentally different than being here and seeing it for ourselves, and in talking to you about what you've been experiencing. I want you to know that everyone on this committee has heard you, they're listening, and they want to represent you. They want to represent your voices. They want to hear what you have to say. I want to thank this entire community for your candor. I want to thank you for your willingness to talk to us and engage with us and to show us what you're dealing with. I want to thank your growers and producers for providing us with fresh and healthy food and for creating the beautiful Eden and oasis carved out of the surrounding desert. Thank you to our law enforcement, our sheriffs, our border patrol, and our police officers. And thank you to our local business owners and community leaders for what you do. But again, I want to be your voice, and to do that, I'm going to read to you some of the notes that I have taken just in the last day or so in visiting with the folks that we've had the opportunity to talk to. Now, you've heard some of this information, but I want to make it very, very clear. These are not Republican talking points. These are not an effort to just attack the Biden administration for the sake of attacking the Biden administration. These are my notes of my conversation with your fellow citizens. As we've already talked about, there's $26 million in uncompensated care for illegal immigrants in just 1 year. There is no payer source for those fees. And the folks that come here are sick. Not all of them, but a lot of them. They have hypertension, they need dialysis, they need heart surgery, and they need intensive care. 25% of illegal babies ending up here that are born here end up in NICU because they don't have any prenatal care. We have to assure that we give a safe discharge, is what our medical professionals told us, which means that they have to provide wheelchairs and walkers and transportation. They may have to make contact with a family member. And none of the NGOs that are working with the Biden administration to further this agenda have offered to pay these costs, and the feds have refused. You cannot discharge a baby without a car seat, and so basically the hospital's been out purchasing car seats throughout the entire surrounding area. But many of these babies have brothers and sisters that also need car seats, so they may end up buying 2 and 3 car seats for the same family. The hospitals has essentially had to set up a hotel upstairs because they can't discharge the patients. They had one baby in NICU for almost 2 months, so the mother had to live there as well. There are lots of signs of abuse with the female migrants that are coming across. It is a federal law that the facility treats everyone who comes to the hospital. In other words, the federal government requires you to provide care, but refuse to pay you for it, the ultimate in an unfunded mandate. You've had illegal immigrants in ICU for over 30 days, some as long as 90 days. You've had to transfer residents to other places, as there have been times when there aren't enough ICU beds because the illegals are taking them. It takes 2 to 3 times the amount of resources to take care of an illegal as it does a resident. One woman at the hospital very compassionately noted that a loss of one person to fentanyl is one too many. In other words, they're very compassionate about what you're dealing with. But the illegals, the increase in illegal immigration has coincided with an increase in fentanyl overdoses. When Trump was president, there were 810 people seeking asylum in 2020. In 2021, it had gone up to 110,000, and in 2022, it was 310,000. And that's just in the Yuma sector alone. These people are processed here, and then they're sent to communities throughout the entire country, as the cartels are telling them where they must go in order to pay back what they have to pay to be brought across to the United States. The CBP has essentially become a concierge service for illegal immigrants. You have aliens from over 100 different countries entering this area. The cartels are controlling all aspects of the border. They earned $3.2 billion last year in human trafficking. The Biden administration is jeopardizing our food supply and our food security. And they're prioritizing illegal aliens over and above American citizens and legal immigrants. These are real live facts told to us and as expressed by real life citizens from this very community. And again, I will say it, you're not forgotten. We will never make life better in foreign countries by destroying the United States of America. We will never make foreign leaders do a better job of taking care of their poor or prosecuting their criminals by sending them across the border illegally. We must protect our borders. We must recognize that citizenship matters, and we must enforce the law. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Lady yields back. The gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Sheriff, could you please summarize the ways that the cartels are involved in illegal border crossings?
So you have the Jalisco New Generation in Baja California. Then you have the Sinaloa cartel in Sonora, Mexico on our very southern border. So the Jalisco New Generation, theirs is the movement of bodies that are coming across the river corridor. So they are the ones that are coordinating. They actually have contacts in different countries that have been identified as being the travel agents, for lack of a better term, to get the people here and to be able to control that coming across. So right now, between midnight and 4 a.m., 40 at a time come across down by the river corridor. So the Sinaloa cartel, they are the ones that are doing the narcotic side of it. So they coordinate between those that can afford and cannot afford to be able to pay the price. And they utilize those people to smuggle the narcotics in, whether it's on a vehicle through the port of entry or whether it's through the remote deserts of our county.
Thank you. So would it be fair to say that the relaxation of border policies has redounded to the benefit of the cartels?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, just to be blunt, it's been a bonanza for them, right? It's expanded their business opportunities for their criminal enterprises, has it not?
Absolutely, and they have scouts that are in our mountains so they can watch Border Patrol's actions out in the remote part of our desert, so they can coordinate the loads getting through, whether they're human or narcotics.
So we know who's benefiting, and so then we have to ask, who's paying the price? Well, first, of course, is the victims of fentanyl. In 2020, Border Patrol seized 4,800 pounds. 2021, it was 11,200. 2022 fiscal year, it was 14,700. And in just the first 4 months for the 2023 fiscal year, 12,500. I have a chart here showing basically a quadrupling in overdoses here in Yuma just over the course of a few years. And of course, this is not a localized matter. Throughout the country, fentanyl poisoning is now the leading cause of death for young people, more than car accidents, more than suicides, more than anything. Sheriff, is it your opinion that fewer Americans would be dying of fentanyl poisoning if the border was as secure as it was at the start of this administration?
Absolutely.
In addition to the victims of fentanyl, we then have the victims of human trafficking as well. Supervisor, I believe we discussed earlier some evidence that you've seen of the increases in the impact of human trafficking here in Yuma.
Yeah, so in the first 3 months, we've seen a 350% uptick in human trafficking, people who have come forward seeking assistance on their own, who have declared that they have been trafficked. And if 9 were willing to do it, I'm sure that there are many more out there looking to free themselves of that bondage.
Sheriff, is it your opinion that fewer people would be suffering through the horror of human trafficking if the border was as secure as it was at the start of this administration?
Absolutely.
And then we have the migrants themselves. In 2022, 856 died attempting to cross the border. That was 300 more than it was in 2021, and 3 times as many as it was just in 2020. Sheriff, is it your opinion that fewer migrants would be dying crossing the border if the border was as secure as it was at the start of this administration?
Yes, sir.
So there you have it. We have a set of policies that has been a bonanza for the cartels, for foreign criminal organizations, and this windfall is being underwritten by pain and suffering and death. That's why this is not a partisan issue. You know, usually we have to weigh costs and benefits, we have to adjudicate competing values, but here it's just bad all the way around. It's negative on both sides of the ledger. And so how does this make any sense? Well, it really only makes sense when you look at it from a political perspective. We had a set of border policies that was working. Everyone here will tell you that. And this administration came into office, and in order to make a political statement, not only reversed those policies, but swung the pendulum radically in the other direction, exploding whatever bipartisan consensus there was on this issue and ushering in a crisis unlike we have seen in American history. So I'm not interested in criticizing our colleagues on the other side of the dais for not being here. I want to encourage them to come here, talk to the supervisor, talk to the sheriff, talk to the hospital, see what we have seen, and I want to work with anyone who is interested in getting this crisis under control. That includes the president, who I implore to accept responsibility, to admit his policies have failed, to find a new Secretary of Homeland Security. And let's all work together to replace pro-cartel policies with pro-America policies.
Thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Mr. Lyons, who benefits? That seems to me to be the fundamental question, right? Who benefits? We talked earlier on January 20th, 2021, first day, President Biden says no more wall, no more remain in Mexico, no more detain and deport. And the result, Sheriff told us what the result is. I think from his testimony he said 2 years ago this was the safest border county in the country. Today we have what's been described here in the last 2 hours.
Yes,
so
sir.
it sort of raises the fundamental, who benefits from this border that's no longer a border, from this open border chaos on our southern border? Who benefits from that? Does our health care system benefit,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Lyons?
No, directly benefiting the cartels.
Does our law enforcement benefit, Sheriff Wilmot?
No, sir.
How about first responders, Supervisor? Does first responders, does that benefit? How about the taxpayers? How about the growers and ranchers and farmers that we heard from earlier? Do they benefit from this chaotic policy that was put in place on day one? How about the legal residents? How about the citizens? Do they benefit?
No.
That's the takeaway here. That's that. How about now? Who does benefit though? Do the cartels benefit, Supervisor Lyons?
Yes, sir.
100%. Do the drug dealers benefit?
100%.
Yeah. And the scary thing is, the sad thing is too, the people, many times the people who are being trafficked across, they don't really benefit either. The things that happen to women, things that happen to kids, we've talked about that. So this is the crazy thing. And this brings us back to what my colleague and friend from Florida said early in today's hearing. I don't think they're going to change. I don't think Joe Biden's going to change, because any administration that puts in policies that harm the citizens, harm law enforcement, harm the taxpayers, harm the farmers, harm the ranchers, harm everyone, it seems, and only benefit the bad guys, the cartels and drug dealers, I don't know that they're going to change without a fight.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that it's good to remember that the source of all fentanyl, and that's being shipped directly from China to the cartels to come and poison the people in the United States.
Yep. And here's, I would just add this to it as well. And this was in your testimony, Supervisor. In your testimony, you were asked by, I believe, by Mr. Gates, I think you said Secretary Mayorkas lied to your face. That was your testimony here today, under oath, here today. You took the oath when we swore you in. You said so if you have an administration that you pay for, your tax dollars pays for the federal government, they come here, they promise to work with local government, work with the local community to better the situation, and then don't deliver on their promise, The only way we're going to fix this is a fight. And the way our system works is when you have split government, you have to do it on the appropriations bills. We are going to have to attach on the appropriation bills, say, look, if you don't start enforcing the law, as Mr. McClintock pointed out, if you don't start enforcing the law, we're not going to fund certain things. I mean, not our law enforcement, not Border Patrol, we need that, but other things, we're going to have to do that if we're going to remedy this situation.
Yes, sir.
That's how bad it is. That's how serious it is. And we came here today to just underscore and hear from people who've been living it now for 2 long years, to hear from you on, so we can go back and tell our colleagues, look, we're going to have to fight. We're going to have to fight for the good people of Yuma County, the good law enforcement folks in Arizona, people providing health care, the mayor of this great town, and, as our other members have pointed out, folks all over the country, because every country is now impacted by 5 million illegal migrants coming into our country in the past 2 years. And that's what we pledged to do. So I want to thank you all for being here today. We're going to close with our the gentleman who represents this fine community for 5 minutes, who's been a good friend of mine in Congress for a number of years, does an outstanding job of serving the folks of his great district here in Arizona. Mr. Gosar is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So I'm going to hit 2 things. I'm going to try to hit this a little differently. It's been alluded to by some of my colleagues. Ben Franklin was asked, what kind of government did you give us? A republic if you can keep it. And what is key to a republic? The rule of law, accountability, and defined defensible borders. Now let's take an example of one of those republics that fell. Rome. They actually invited the conquered to conquer. Now think about that. Think about that. And the reason I bring that up is that we've been bamboozled by the other side in the press. That there's only 10 or 11 million illegals in this country. That's not true. The Ivy League study in 2014, 2015 showed that there was between 33 and 36 million. You add another 6 million that has come across during this tenure, you're over 40 million illegals. Now, why do I bring that up? Well, in a population of 360 million, maybe 10 million doesn't really make much of a difference. But when it's 40 or 50 million, they're changing culture. That's where this is going. Changing culture. Now, the other thing is I keep hearing over and over again, what can you do about it? As has been alluded, we're one of the 3 stools. Well, there's the power of the purse. The chairman actually just brought this up. That fight's coming. That was part of the fight that the 20 held out for, to get that rules changed. But it's even better than that. We have an opportunity that if they were never authorized by Congress, that we can defund them. This is going to be so much fun. Can you say ATF? Can you say OPT? So now we take the fight to them. And why is this important? Because we have to have that power of the purse. That also means that we have to get rid of the national emergency on COVID. It seems kind of strange that I'm bringing this up. But when you're under a national emergency, the executive branch has 120 additional powers. And one of them is to move money around. So let me share with you an example. Congress, in its wisdom a year and a half ago, authorized $2.some billion to go to COVID testing. It disappeared. It was rerouted by the administration for illegal immigration housing. Now let's step back. This last fall, there was an omnibus bill of $1.7 trillion passed. And it was passed intentionally under the COVID national emergency. That means that, succinctly, not one of those dollars that Congress is obliged to spend has to be spent that way. Not that it will, but I hope I'm sharing with you that they get a lot more latitude. And so that power of the purse has to return. Okay? So we also have to do our job. In the national emergency, would you be surprised to find out that once a declaration of a national emergency occurs, that Congress shall, no later than 6 months later, convene to decide whether to continue that national emergency or kill it. I dropped that bill twice. Ms. Pelosi killed it twice. So the magic about this is that once you start the process, it has to go through. It's a privileged motion. So we've actually enabled our Senate minority to actually take this up because we've already passed it out of the House. So play smarter, not harder. The appropriations process is going to be the big fight. You got a debt ceiling. You got these appropriations. Finding these programs, rules, agencies that were not authorized by Congress is a good step in the right direction. Because we have to get back the levity of equal justice under the law. We've been asleep at the wheel for a long period of time, folks. We saw this in the Obama administration. The Fast and Furious, Benghazi, the IRS. It's countless. Who's paid the penalty for it? Nobody's paid the penalty for it. And that they can do this to a president, they throw everything at him, and not one thing has been found on the guy. That's one of the founding principles that's failing now in our republic. So trust is a series of promises kept. I hope that you'll look at us, and when appropriation season comes, they told us they were going to march up there. They were going to get the power of the purse because maybe we can earn your trust again. I'm going to end because I'm a person of accountability. I do animes. I take for full responsibility for those things. So I believe that there has to be a personal touch to this. So let me go through the roster of who's not here. Mr. Nadler from New York, Ms. Lofgren from California, Ms. Jackson Lee from Texas, Mr. Cohen from Tennessee, Mr. Johnson from Georgia, Mr. Schiff from California, Mr. Cicilline from Rhode Island, Mr. Swalwell from California, Mr. Liu from California, Ms. Jayapal from Washington, Mr. Correa from California, Ms. Macbeth from Georgia, Ms. Dean from Pennsylvania, Ms. Escobar from Texas, Ms. Ross from North Carolina, Ms. Bush from Missouri, and Mr. Ivey from Maryland. Until we start putting names and holding people accountable, we're not going to get anywhere close to our goal. We the people. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Chairman, for the privilege of sitting in and
Thank you.
charging your parade.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you, Paul. I would just close by reminding everyone it's a great country. My favorite scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul is the old guy giving advice to the young guy, Timothy, and he says what? Fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. I tell people I love that verse because of the action in it. It's not a sissy, wimpy verse. It's an American verse. Words of actions. Americans aren't timid people. We are people who get the job done. We fight, we finish, we keep faith with the principles that made our country special. That verse characterizes this community, and we have so appreciated your hospitality over the last 24 hours. The mayor, the supervisor, the hospital administrator, the sheriff, and everyone else we've had a chance to visit with, the Border Patrol agents, law enforcement, first response, all the folks we've got a chance to visit with. You are living that verse here, and we appreciate it, and we owe you that same kind of commitment in the United States Congress. You pay our salary. We're supposed to fight for you. Your two guys from Arizona are definitely doing that. The rest of us need to do the same, and we pledge to you that we will. We understand how serious this situation is. I'll finish with this final story. I share this all the time because it had an impact on my wife and I. This is probably 10, 12 years ago. We lived north of Dayton, Ohio, near the town of Urbana. And about 12 years ago, we had some good friends of ours in Dayton. Said, are you guys free for dinner? It was the summertime of the year. And they said, yeah. They said, well, come down. We're going to meet them and meet us down here at our place in the Dayton area. We're going to go out to dinner. They said, before we go to dinner, we're going to tour the Wright brothers' home. And we said, great. We like history. We like, seeing that. We live in the house we raised our family in was built in 1837, and we liked old things in history. He said, sure. So we go down there. We pay the lady at the door with the Historical Society like $5, and they take you on a tour of this home, and you learn all kinds of neat things about these two amazing Americans. You learn about the bicycle shop. You learn about the things they tinkered and built and the stuff they did and all the things they were into. And it's a fascinating tour. And the tour ends in Wilbur Wright's bedroom, and they tell you a few more things about this particular Wright brother, and then they finish the tour by showing you two pictures. First picture they hold up was that very first flight, 1903, in this thing they called a plane in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. And when you see that picture, your first thought was, wow, how did that thing get off the ground? How did that contraption fly? And the truth is it barely did. It flew like 100 feet, got like 10, 12 feet off the ground. And they show you that picture, and you're like, okay, that's kind of neat, because you sort of remember that from when they taught you that in school, 7th, 8th grade, whenever you learned that. You're like, okay, that's kind of neat. They put that picture down, and then they hold up a second picture. 1947, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in a jet. And I was like, wow, that I didn't know. I must not have been paying attention that day in school or so. I didn't know that. And I think that's amazing. In 44 years, we go from two guys flying 100 feet in this jalopy contraption of a thing they called a plane to another great American breaking the sound barrier in a jet. It's amazing. And they put that picture down. That was the end of the tour. And Polly and I start walking out. As we're walking out, I thought, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Why did they stop there? I represent Wapakoneta, Ohio, hometown of Neil Armstrong, who 22 years later stepped on the moon. Think about it. 66 years. We go from two guys flying 100 feet to another American stepping on the moon. One lifetime. One lifetime, this country did that. And I would argue no other country is capable of doing that. Only this nation, the greatest country ever. You can't fault people for wanting to come here. They just got to do it legally. And that's what we're going to fight for and make sure the law is enforced. Thank you all very much. Our committee is adjourned.